Stats SA has faced significant criticism following its acknowledgement that certain segments of the data gathered during the 2022 census are flawed and do not meet the necessary standards for official public utilization. The admission has led the Democratic Alliance to criticize the matter as a national scandal. The party demands an urgent reconduct of the census to guarantee dependable data. For more insights, we are joined by Willie Aucamp, the DA national spokesperson. Willie, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. Now, you have dubbed this as the DA as a national scandal. Just talk to us in terms of the significance of inaccuracies when it comes to data within a census, and what does this mean to the ordinary South African?
Good evening, Katlego. I think it's very important that we just put into perspective what the discrepancies are. The United Nations has got a standard of an undercount of normally 5%, which they deem is allowable. In this census, we've had an undercount of 31%. Now, there's a huge difference between 5% and 31%. The problem that a country experienced the moment that a census and the data coming out of a census is not totally reliable is that a census is there to help government do its planning. It enables government to know how many people stay in which area, how big a hospital they must put up, or how big a police station must be, or where schools must be built. And if there are problems with that data, it will obviously create a problem with regards to the way in which government must plan for their future endeavors.
But Stats SA has come out and said that there's other key data that does exist in which some of this information could be found, which is readily available to the public. Do those forms of alternative sources not count at all?
You see, Katlego, that is where the problem comes in. If you go and you listen to the academics, they say that the fact that there's such a huge undercount does have an effect on all other statistics that are out there. So it creates a problem when you build other stats on flawed stats that you've got now. And that is not the Democratic Alliance that say that. That's being said by academics and people that are really knowledgeable when it comes to drafting a census like this.
I mean, given that the census was conducted at the height of COVID-19, was it expected that we would have such discrepancies? And what lessons could we learn from that, given that we've got another census that would come up in a couple of years? What lessons could we take from this in ensuring that we don't repeat such mistakes?
Well, firstly, Katlego, the census was not done at the height of COVID-19. It was done when the lockdown was already passed. So to use COVID as the only excuse is not acceptable. The most important thing that must happen here now is that the previous census was done in 2011. There are normally 10-year intervals when you do censuses. Now, if we are going to wait another 10 years, it means that there will be a 20-year gap between having reliable information. The undercount in 2011 was 11%, 20% less than what it is now. So what the Democratic Alliance has asked for is that the next census be brought forward as far as possible so that Stats SA can already now start and prepare for a census so that a census can be held as soon as possible in order to enable government to have reliable figures as soon as possible so that they can do proper planning on that figures.
I mean, but you can't say that it wasn't necessarily at the height of COVID when it was completed in 2022. So in 2021, during a lockdown, certainly reaching certain numbers of people and getting the correct numbers must have had some kind of an implication with regards to how this data was collected.
Katlego, we had the biggest part of our lockdown in 2020 and not in 2021. So at the stages in 2021 and 2022, when this census data was collected, the highest part of the COVID-19 restrictions was already passed. I can understand that there might have been problems with regards to their planning in this, but the fact of the matter remains that the undercount was so much And normally what happens with an undercount, they go after the people that they could not get the first time. It's called the PES, that is stands for the post-enumeration survey. Normally, a post-enumeration survey is done within days after not being able to get to the houses of certain people. The post-enumeration survey in this instance was done 4 months after the fact. So that also creates a problem with regards to the reliability of the information that we've got here.
Speaking of that undercount, you say 31% is where we're currently sitting with an undercount. Are we seeing already some spaces, especially within our municipalities, where that undercounting impacts on how we've budgeted and how the implementation or the rollout of those budgets currently are?
In the Western Cape government has on numerous occasions said that they believe that there is a large undercount of the population of the Western Cape. We all know that there's a huge migration from other provinces to the Western Cape. Now, the Stats SA's figures that they release in the census has got a direct impact on the equitable share that municipalities get and the division of revenue that provinces get. It determines how much money you can get based on the amount of people that you've got there. So it's got a huge direct impact. This 31% undercount is the highest undercount ever recorded. So you can imagine if there is such a high undercount, what the effect on the pockets of municipalities and provinces can be. It will be huge.
So is it reasonable to call for a recount? I mean, the DA is calling either for a recount or for the next census to be pulled up a little closer, given resources. I mean, you also mentioned that generally it's 10 years in between a census. Do we have the capacity and the resources to have a census done sooner than what we should be expecting?
Well, Katlego, we can't wait another 10 years, and that is the problem. We can't base the planning that this new government of national unity is going to do on figures that is not correct. So what the DA is saying is that we must bring this census, the next one, back as close as possible. If we've got to say to Stats SA, you've got to redo the census, and if they say it takes them a certain amount of time to plan that, then we must give them the instruction that they start planning that right now, so that we can have, as soon as possible, a new census where reliable information that will enable government to do proper planning can be made available.
All right, Mr. Willie Aucamp, thank you so much for your time.